All right, everyone. After watching the last presidential debate, you may have noticed that you didn't really walk away from knowing anything, besides what you came with when it comes to Trump and Biden, right? You may even ask yourself if there are any other alternatives to these two. Well, we decided in this episode to do a full breakdown of each candidate who's running for president. You guys know what this is. You're listening to Logic and Reason.
My imperative is to bring peace and order to this world. I am about to fulfill that imperative.
Sweet. So, as you guys know, we are talking about the presidential candidates. We have some folks coming in from YouTube. Shout out to everybody watching on YouTube. Shout out to everybody who's watching on X. It is 4th of July, so I hope you guys enjoyed your 4th. We spent it doing research. So we enjoyed ourselves, I guess, in a way. Mel will be in the chat, so if you guys have any questions for her, you can always put them in the chat. And she's going to be chiming in just different things there. You also might hear our little one in the background as well. He's going to be hanging out with the show. But before we get into all the nitty and gritty, I do want to state that all the information that we're going to share today was pulled from the official websites of each candidate, right? So if you think we said something that's incorrect, you may need to reach out to those individuals to get their information changed, because we got them on their official website. The second thing, and probably more important than that, is the fact that this isn't really about the political parties or picking teams or anything like that. We simply wanted to look at each platform and compare the different strategies and priorities of each candidate. And I feel like that's something that we did not receive with the last debate. Obviously, the other people who are running for office weren't even involved in that debate. And so we want to give that opportunity to really kind of figure out what's what. And so let's get into probably the person that we, I don't know if you know the most of, but who's definitely the most popular. That is Senor Trump himself. The Orange Man. All right, so his economic policies usually include reducing regulations. We're lowering taxes. We want to make sure that we bring manufacturing back to the U.S. Healthcare, a little lack on the healthcare thing, but primarily he wants to end the COVID mandates. That's one of the things he said a lot during his campaign. When it comes to education, again, it's kind of weak on that end as well, but he does believe in choice in charter schools. He also wants to ban critical race theory. Immigration, it's all about the border. Get that wall. We're all about the wall. He also wants to reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy. When it comes to foreign policy, again, we want to support Israel. We don't want to be involved in unnecessary foreign wars, and he wants to be tough on all the countries that we've allegedly been lax on. Senor Trump. So let's go through each one by one. I know he's very popular, or he's liked by a lot of people because of his personality, because of his charisma. So we're not going to discuss any of that. Let's go off with the immigration. All right, so his immigration policies, right? He wants to build the border. He wants to end catch and release at the border. He wants to reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy. And he wants to increase deportations and illegal immigrants. Is that surprising to you, Mel?
No. No, not at all. He has been, especially the building more of the border wall and increasing deportations, that has been Senor Trump through and through from the beginning, from the very first campaign. Before that, we remember him speaking directly to the Mexican president before he had any authority.
Right.
Yeah, he doesn't surprise me there. What about you?
No, that's really consistent with what we've seen from him. For his economic policies, he believes in lowering taxes for corporations, because in his opinion, and I guess for the Republican platform as well, they believe in lowering the corporate taxes will help increase economic growth. because of the trickle-down economics that was originally established by Ronald Reagan. He also wants to reduce regulations. He thinks that kind of gets in the way of being able to stimulate the economy. He wants to renegotiate the trade deals that we have with different countries to kind of get them more favorable to the U.S. And he is one of the people, he's not the only one, but he's one of the people who wants to bring manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. That's going to be an interesting one if that's attainable, because I know a lot of our manufacturing is done specifically in China.
Yeah.
And so, again, is that anything from there that kind of sticks out to you?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head with the manufacturing back to the U.S. It would be a little difficult, and we'd have to pay a little bit more for some of our items, or a lot of our items. But I think it'd be well worth it if we're really all about, promoting America first. So, I'm not a Trumper, but that doesn't seem like a bad idea.
Yeah, I think the manufacturing jobs thing is a good thing. I definitely am in favor of that, and also I like his approach as far as renegotiating trade deals. I think he's the one that said that he's willing to increase tariffs to kind of make sure those prices go up.
Yeah, and actually, so I completely missed part of it when you said the manufacturing. I was only thinking of the consumer end, bringing jobs back to the U.S. Yes, that is key. Employment is a key issue that I think that would help with.
One of the things that he noticed, or that we noticed from his website too, is his stance on law enforcement and crime. So he does want to increase the funding for police departments. He wants to strengthen law enforcement as a whole, and he wants to have tougher penalties on assaults on police. I think this might be stemming from what happened with BLM and the different protests that we kind of experienced in the last couple of years, and so. His take on that, just based off of that, is he probably was not a huge fan of BLM, which, BLM has issues for other reasons, especially from, taking money from folks and not actually giving it to the people who they said they were going to give it to.
The main function of their their main assignment.
Right. So that there's some issues there, but it's interesting how he's the only one, and maybe it's the Republican platform as a whole. Who knows? I'm not going to know for sure, because what's weird is the Republican Party has changed over the years since Trump has been involved. So I don't know if it's Trump stuff or Republican stuff. But for sure, boosting the strength of the police, again, with the Palestinian protests, right? That's another one that he really wants to add more beef to our police department. Anything you want to comment on that?
No.
All right, so drug cartels. It's another one in the opioid crisis. So what he wants to do is designate drug cartels as a foreign terrorist organization. He also wants to use military assets to combat cartels. And he wants to impose naval embargoes on cartels. And that as a means to try to curb some of those fentanyl drugs that are coming in from the border.
Yeah.
He also wants to seek death penalties for drug smugglers and traffickers.
He probably has interesting.
Yeah, he probably has the toughest stance on drugs, or I guess the war on drugs, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
He probably has the stiffest stance on that.
We definitely need to do something about the drug crisis and I guess the smuggling aspect of coming from out of the country. Yeah.
Yeah, the fentanyl thing has gotten really bad. I know we did a video on that last year. I think it was last year. Mm-hmm. Just talking about the effects, and it's only gotten worse since we've spoken on it. I know. Shout outs to Texas Pictures. There's a YouTube channel. They have a whole series of different stories of people who've gotten impacted and unfortunately lost their lives because of fentanyl. All right, so Trump's stance is on education, right? Trump wants to expand school choice and charter schools. He does want to ban critical race theory and gender ideology in schools, and he wants to create an online kind of education program. This isn't surprising. I think this is probably a Republican platform spillover.
Yeah.
The critical race theory thing has been a hot topic in recent time. You've seen a lot of people, a lot of parents go to school boards to voice their opinions on what stuff they want in their curriculums. The gender ideology stuff, I think, is assuming to the LGBTQ plus content that's been used in schools. I'm not sure if I'm a fan of doing a federal anything when it comes to stuff like that. I think whether it's, for or against, I don't think the federal government should really partake in that. That should be more a state level thing. Like if you live in a state that is more LGBTQ friendly, right? And people vote to incorporate those things in their school, by all means, vice versa. If you have parents saying, "Hey, we don't want this in our schools," that should also be a thing. I think it should be dependent upon the parents of that specific region.
Absolutely.
In my
I
opinion
agree.
on that.
I totally agree on that.
Foreign policy. I really can't say this is a foreign policy. This is it's very skinny. But he does believe in strengthening our military, right? Using, the "I have a big gun" method. A lot of people have voiced, the candidates have voiced that they are not a fan of foreign wars. Trump happens to be one of those people. Trump also supports Israel. So that's actually something that him and Biden have in common. And he wants to have a tough stance on China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. None of that's surprising to me.
On China?
China. All right, so veteran affairs. He wants to continue reforms on the VA system. He wants to increase mental health services. This is pretty generic stuff. Again, I think Joe Biden probably has a similar stance on these things. And he wants to expand educational benefits to veterans. Energy. Now, this one's a divergent. So he wants to increase domestic oil and gas production. Lift that lid up and let it fly. That's essentially kind of what he wants to do with that. He also wants to eliminate a socialist Green New Deal policies. So I can only interpret that by he doesn't seem to want to have renewable energies be funded, I guess, or more researched for it to kind of catch up to the demands of today. Very much the old guard, let's keep polluting the air. Let's keep polluting our soil. Let's keep polluting our water. We've now seen the effects of fracking on the environment. The effects, obviously, of oil has been there for years. I'm not sure if I don't think he cares too much about climate change.
No, not that he's mentioned.
Yeah. So that's not really an issue for him.
He's concerned about profits.
Concerned about profits. So that's his stance on that. Because of his legal issues and all the stuff that's transpired around that, he is also very staunch on election integrity. And so he wants to implement a voter ID law nationwide. He also wants to ban unsure drop boxes and ballot harvesting. And he wants to prohibit private funding for local election offices. The other thing is for government reform. He wants to have term limits for Congress members. And he wants to ban lobbying by former Congress members and cabinet officials. He also wants to ban stock trading for Congress members using insider trading. I'm actually a fan of that. I think that's, Nancy Pelosi is probably the figurehead for insider trading. Every time either her or her husband do anything in the stock market, it seems to be local news. And they're always doing some type of deal and trading something. And she was really famous for selling off a bunch of stocks prior to the stock market crash before COVID, and then buying up a bunch of stuff when it finally crashed. So that insider trading thing probably needs to go away. And I think that I'm okay with that policy.
Yeah.
Healthcare. Again, not really much of a platform when it comes to healthcare. It's not really something of an interest for him. He does want to increase healthcare choice and transparency. But it's predominantly, this is about ending the COVID-19 mandates. That's essentially what we found from that. And he did have an interest in lowering drug prices, although he didn't really go into detail on how exactly he's going to do that. So I don't know if I can even count that. But that is essentially the Trump platform. You have anything you want to add on that?
I was just going to ask if you all want to let us know in the chat anything that you heard there that was of interest to you, or if you wanted to know more from Trump, what you're not pleased about. But yeah, just let us know what you guys think as well.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to, I guess, one of the people that I like to make fun of the most.
Oh dear.
Brandon. Let's go, Brandon. Also known as Sleepy Joe. All right, so Sleepy Joe wants to create jobs for the middle class. He wants to lower the cost for working families. Let's get it, Sleepy Joe. Doesn't sound so sleepy. Healthcare. He wants to expand access to affordable healthcare and strengthen the Affordable Care Act, something that Trump definitely opposes. He also wants to cap insulin prices. Education. He wants to provide debt relief for student loans, and he also wants to increase the Pell Grants. That's essentially it, though. There's not really much on there. Immigration doesn't really have a policy for immigration, but we're assuming based off of the Democratic platform that he wants to do something to help immigrants become citizens. And for his foreign policy, again, there's not really much there either, besides supporting Ukraine and Israel and rallying international support for democracy. That's pretty much it. There's not really much there. So let's go into analysis. Mr. Joe... Sleepy Joe.
He's wide awake on these.
Yeah, I know.
These, policies.
It's funny though because I remember one of the press conferences. One of the reporters actually asked if Joe was asleep.
Oh gosh.
That was pretty funny.
What happened? Oh yes.
Yeah. That was one of those.
And that's inappropriate.
That's inappropriate. That was pretty good. It's pretty good. All right, so let's go through some of his platform. Protecting democracy. I don't know what that means. What does that actually mean? What specifically? How do you protect democracy? Does that? Do you go to war with people? Do you what does that mean? I don't know anything.
What does that mean? What's even describing or defining as democracy for him to defend?
So he says he wants to strengthen democratic institutions. I don't know what strengthening means. Does that mean giving people aid? What does that mean? Like you gotta. There's not really much specifics here.
And it sounds good.
It sounds great. It sounds great, but it's empty. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So his economic policy, right? He wants to create jobs and rebuild the middle class. Again, that's very empty. I don't know what that means either. Lowering costs for working families. I don't know what that means either, right? Fighting inflation and reducing prices. How? And implementing fair tax policies, which involves taxing the rich, essentially.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask what is fair.
Yeah.
But, okay.
Now, he does want to improve infrastructure. So part of creating jobs is to create infrastructure jobs. He also wants to do more investment with clean energy. So that I imagine some of the job creation would be involved in that, if I had to guess. Healthcare, right? Really, it's all about adding to the Affordable Care Act. I actually don't have an issue with Obamacare. I personally used Obamacare back in the day when Obama was still in office. Way
back in the day.
Yeah, way back in the day. This was back in the time where I didn't have steady employment, and I was kind of just working on gigs and just trying to get whatever little side jobs I could. And that was the way of getting health insurance during that time. And so I don't have an issue with that. I think it's not like the best insurance by any stretch of the imagination, but it's coverage, and I think everyone should have it, because even if you're young, which I was at that time, you could still run into an accident. You could still get hit by a car. You could still get sick from something. So I think health insurance is something that even if you're young, I think everybody should at least seriously consider. Yeah,
that's what I was going to ask you to clarify if you meant just health insurance in general, not just Obamacare, of course.
No, I mean, if this is a means to it, I think this is I thought when it first came out, it was a baby step. I didn't think it really. I think it was better than nothing, and at that time there wasn't really much there. I know Trump does not like this at all, and I guess a lot of people who are consider themselves Trumpers don't like, the Affordable Care Act. And I would have to ask questions as to why.
Yeah, because again, affect them.
Right, because again, I'm coming from personal experience of of being a person who did not have steady employment and was just trying to just make it, and I couldn't afford $500 a month for a health insurance plan, or $1,000 a month if you're like just trying to do self employment.
Yeah.
So $20 was good.
And that was well before the gig economy we have now. So now there's probably so many
it's
more
much worse today.
people who would be able to relate to that.
Right.
Not to belabor the issue there.
Right. So one of the other things, and I think this is more of a platform thing, reproductive rights, right? He's been running on this platform of protecting and expanding access to reproductive health care. I don't like that terminology. I don't think it's really accurate. It's a soft way of saying protecting access to abortion, right? And I know we as a country are on polar ends when it comes to abortion and whether we should or shouldn't have it, or whether people have access to it or not. And there's a lot of different stances on abortion. Some people think that, hey, I'm not going to partake, but it should be accessible to other people. Other people think that, no, we should just have it completely off the books. We do need to come to some type of agreement on that. I think the biggest issue, at least from the people who oppose abortion, is they don't want abortions to be financed by the federal government. I think it's a financial problem, as far as they don't want a personal thing to be publicly financed. Mm-hmm. Based off of the conversations
they're not going to partake in. Not everyone is partaking, so why should I pay for
that?
All this stuff? Yeah.
And so we got to figure out what the solution to that is. But that's that's his stance on that. Other people haven't really championed that too much, at least from what we've seen. Obviously, Trump, no. But yeah, so that's kind of what that is. Manufacturing jobs, right? I think everyone, for the most part, has this on their platform of trying to bring back manufacturing jobs to the U.S. That seems to be a consensus among all of the different candidates running.
Yeah.
He also wants to create good-paying union jobs. Unions are a little bit more relevant in blue states. In a state like Texas, we don't have unions, so which it has its own issues there. So I don't know. I guess that doesn't really help you if you're not in one of those states, like New York,
or even his home state. I think northern, but he's visited a lot of states or a lot of unions, I should say, earlier in the year. So yeah, I know that's part of his employment plan.
Yeah. Okay, so climate change, that's another part of his platform, and he wants to rejoin the Paris Climate Accord. Not really know too much about that one. Gun violence prevention. He wants to implement some type of bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which I imagine is background checks and things of that nature. The issue I have with what's currently discussed when it comes to gun violence and gun control and things of that nature is a lot of the people that we've seen in the news who've committed these massive atrocities. Prior to that atrocity, they did not have a criminal record. So the background check thing would not help in that situation. A lot of these situations. Because these are, for the most part, first-time offenders.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We have to figure out what we want to do with that. He wants to expand the healthcare benefits for veterans and also add to the PACT Act of the people who were exposed to toxic substances. We kind of discussed that during the live debate. And then he also is a champion for social justice and equality. He's made it an effort to appoint diverse judges, and really, can we really say it's diverse judges? It's predominantly black women judges. And having black women as judges is great, but let's call it a spade a spade. You really can't say it's diversity if you're only hiring one demo.
Yeah. What about the
other people who live in this country? So that's where it's like, let's, if you're hyper focusing on black women, then it's like, it's not really diversity. Like that one, I think it's Utah, that has their whole court of appeals has like 7 black women judges. They're all black women. I'm like, that's not diversity. Everyone's the same.
Everyone is the same.
So I don't know.
Yeah. So that would by definition not be diversity.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's their new way of saying diversity. And I'm happy for those women to have the opportunity if they were not going to be looked at before for the positions.
Sure.
But to take off everyone else and only have one demographic, I don't know what the expected outcome is supposed to be for them, aside from just representation.
There's a act called Respect for Marriage Act that includes same-sex marriages and interracial marriages, and that's confusing to me because I didn't know interracial marriages were under attack.
News to me.
Yeah, so that's
so they're together.
They're together.
Huh.
I'm not sure how that works.
Okay.
Someone explain to me
Different
that
things,
in the chat.
But okay.
Yeah, who knows? And he wants to change the marijuana policies on the federal level. And that's essentially when it comes to social justice. We've already mentioned education, and we already mentioned a non-foreign policy. I mean, that's there's not really much there. That's Sleepy Joe for you guys. You have anything you would like to add from that?
If you're just now joining on X/Twitter, I don't know, I'm going to keep calling it Twitter. Welcome on in. Please feel free to join the chat there or hop on over to YouTube as well. And welcome or continue enjoying to the people who've already been in the YouTube chat.
Cool.
Yeah.
So now we're getting into the lesser known candidates. We all know about Joe. We all know about Trump. I'm really excited for this section because I wasn't very impressed with either one of those two. And so I really wanted to dig into these new candidates and see, or not new, but these other candidates to see if there's something there. So the first one is the guy who lost his uncle and his dad, Raspy Rob. So he wants to raise minimum wage to $15, and he also wants to reduce the military spending. Reduce that spending. He also wants to support small businesses. For healthcare, he wants to prevent chronic diseases or figure out what is causing chronic diseases. I think that's an excellent point there. He also wants to reduce the influence of pharmaceutical companies. For education, he wants to create an academy that allows you to learn different things online and have trained skills and trades. That's not too bad. For immigration, he wants to secure the border, which is very broad and generic and doesn't really mean much. But he does want to work with other countries to stem some type of migration flow. For foreign policy, he wants to stop these forever wars, and he wants to seek some type of diplomatic solution for resolving things like Ukraine and Israel. That is Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Anything that you all had already heard or weren't expecting?
You know, I think his platform is lesser known. I don't think most people really know much about him.
Yeah. I'm excited to get into it.
All right, so for one of his policy platforms, he wants to reform the government, right? He wants to dissolve the corrupt merger of state and corporate powers, the influence that money has on our government. He also wants to remove corporate influence in regulatory agencies. It is weird how a lot of the companies have a lot of say in their regulation, which it's actually it's not weird. It's unfortunate because it makes sense. Most of the talented people who are in a lot of these industries work for private business, right? They don't work for the government. So there's a inherent problem with that because how are you supposed to regulate something when the most talented people work for that company? So I can see that being an issue. For economic policy, like I mentioned earlier, he wants to raise the minimum wage to $15. He also wants to support small businesses. And he wants to persecute union-busting corporations. He wants to reduce military spending and redirect those resources to domestic needs. And he wants to make student debt dischargeable through bankruptcy, which is actually a pretty nice feature. And he wants to cut the interest rates to zero. So basically kind of what we experienced a little bit during COVID, but make that more of a long-standing thing. We have All Is Well saying, hey, everyone, make sure you guys put some comments down in the chat if you're interested. We have 10 people watching right now, at least from YouTube. Nobody wants to chat. That's all right. That's okay.
Feeling a little quiet on 4th of July? Too much food? Too much barbecue?
I know. Nobody slided me a plate. That's unfortunate. For housing, this is an interesting one. So he wants to implement a tax-free 3% government-backed mortgage bond. and encourage zoning changes to allow more housing options. He also wants to discourage corporate investment in single-family homes. That, I think, is tremendous. One of the issues I've had with the housing situation is, companies like BlackRock and whatnot are buying up all these different homes so that, regular Joe like you and I don't have access to purchase these homes because they're just paying them out cash. Right. And then they're either flipping them and charging more for them, or they're renting them out. And so you never really have the opportunity to actually buy the home. So that's unfortunate. I do think there should be some type of rule where you can't do that. Right. The single homes should be going to people, regular people. It shouldn't be going to corporations. And that mortgage-backed, the 3% one should be interesting. I'm curious about that, especially it's tax-free.
Yeah.
That should be interesting. I don't know how you would implement any of those things, but yeah, it's at least an interesting thought. And I didn't really see anybody.
Better than what the other ones are offering. Sorry,
Yes.
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying I don't really see other people really trying to tackle the housing issue, at least directly.
Yeah.
Foreign policy is a little weak. I would say he does want to end forever wars, which is a pretty common theme with everyone. We've all kind of just been saturated and just kind of just tired of always being at war, especially with essentially no gains. Like did we win anything that we did in Afghanistan and Iraq, Iran, all these different places that we've sent troops at? Did we achieve anything? I don't know.
I don't know. And so many people coming back,
with issues and yeah, this is unfortunate. He also wants to seek some type of diplomatic solution for issues that you see like in Ukraine and Israel and Palestine. And he also wants to reduce military spending. That seems to be another one with a lot of these third-party candidates is the military spending is just outrageous. Immigration, secure the border. Again, I don't really know what that means, but he said it. He also wants to end illegal immigration. And he wants to kind of work with other countries to figure out solutions for these flows of migrants. And so that's something that he's spoken to about. He also wants to reform the asylum claim process. And I guess maybe to reduce the number of people who are coming in. As far as environmental policy, he is interested in protecting the environment and trying to reduce the amount of corporate pollution. He wants to transition to organic foods and less on these massive, industrial food complex that we currently have right now. I mean, a lot of food that we eat is not really real food.
Yeah.
And so that's a really interesting policy suggestion, and I don't think I've seen anyone else mention anything like that
at all.
And so that's pretty cool. He also wants to implement a wildfire management plan because California has really been getting hit lately with these wildfires. Healthcare. So he wants to focus on preventing chronic disease. He wants to create some type of like think tank type thing to kind of go into trying to figure out how these things are happening, especially if it's environment related. That is a tremendous thing. I think, he's probably going to lean into realizing the effects of PFAS. If you guys saw our PFAS video, we kind of talked about the effects of PFAS. And so that's something that definitely, if he can get on board on that and really try to figure out how we can clean up our environment to get that stuff out of there, that would be tremendous. He also wants to reduce the influence that pharmaceutical companies have on health agencies. I know the pharma has been going nuts. If you happen to have a severe illness, you will know the cost of drugs is too high. And if you're a healthy person, congratulations to you. You won't have to experience any of that. But yeah, it needs reform. Long story short. His energy policy. So he wants to support the development of clean energy. This is really kind of late, in my opinion. We've already seen the effects that our activities have had on the climate. Last I checked on that, some scientists were saying we're past the point of being able to resolve this issue. So although this is good and it's better than nothing, I do think that it's kind of too little too late at this point. So we're just going to just see what happens. I mean, the summers are getting too hot. I know last year England had a heat wave that just like killed a bunch of people because they're not used to having 100-degree weather up there.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're about to get hit with some really bad stuff. We have a hurricane not too far from Texas.
Yeah, and we were just coming off of some random tornado.
Right, we had a random, and we don't get tornadoes like that, at least on the southern end. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're about to get it, and it's not going to be fun. But hey, we're here now. So he has mentioned some policy suggestions for criminal justice reform, and so he's mentioned he wants to end the war on drugs, which I that doesn't really help the fentanyl problem. I think that's. I would have to dig a little bit more into what he means by like ending the war on drugs. What is the proposed alternative? He also wants to reform prisons to focus more on rehabilitation, which I think is a good thing. And he also wants to transform policies to focus on preventing violence in communities. And I think again that's kind of really broad. It doesn't really mean much. For abortion, since he's been asked about abortion, I think he was a Democrat at some point. Now
Briefly, at least, yeah.
Yeah, I think now he's running as an independent. But his stance on abortion, he wants to implement more choices to focus on supporting mothers and families, which, if I interpret that correctly, I think he is in favor of access.
Yes.
Right.
Access
So,
and choice.
and then he also wants to expand subsidized daycare and adoption support. Now that's an interesting move. I haven't heard anybody talk about adoption, and so it'd be interesting to see where that goes if he happened to have the opportunity to do something about adoptions, because adoption is outrageously expensive for essentially the populace helping other people out. Like,
Yeah.
you would think adoption is a better alternative than foster care, right? And so why make the process difficult? Now, granted, as I say that, I acknowledge that a couple of weeks ago, a white couple adopted a bunch of black kids and made them do slave labor.
Oh no.
So
Yes,
there has
in
to be
the,
some level of barriers, right?
in the north.
But
Yeah.
it shouldn't
Very
cost you
unfortunate case.
$30,000 to adopt a kid. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
He does mention things about addiction and mental health. He wants to create some type of network of healing farms where addicts can recover and develop skills, which I think is a great thing, especially if you can get them off of drugs and give them a means to get some money coming in. I think you're setting somebody up for success. And then he had a whole policy cocktail list for black people in black communities. So I'm going to kind of go through this whole thing and try to summarize it up a little bit. So he has a thing called Operation Phoenix, which is designed to support black businesses. And so he considers the black business to be the lifeblood of the community. And so this includes creating a black business development agency. It includes web courses taught by black entrepreneurs. It includes low-cost loans for approved business plans. And it also includes trying to create as many full-time jobs in the black community as possible. He also is, I think, the only one that's talking about black maternal health. If you guys are unfamiliar, black women have the highest rates of maternity rate of death when it comes to pregnancy and childbirth. And seeing it firsthand for myself, I can see why. You do need an advocate with you when you're going through all these different situations. And if you don't have that support, things can go bad. I think the other thing too, that at least from what I've seen, just from being the not the woman in the situation, but just being a part of this experience, is people not really listening to you when you're voicing concerns about pain and things like that. So I think programs like this would be good. He wants to support coverage for pre and postnatal care. I think that's also good. Providing doulas. We didn't use a doula, but
No.
I guess doulas
I've been open to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if there's a program that has assistance with that on there. So
Yeah.
why not?
And he wants to increase funding for the wards who are in the black communities. And he wants to create some training for medical students who may have implicit bias, which I think the main problem with that is you have a bunch of people who are nurses that should not be nurses. They're in the field for the wrong reasons. This isn't one of those jobs that you should be in to collect a check. And we've seen that from just our experience. Like, some of those folks had no business being there. What do you think?
Yeah. Some of them, I know that's not very descriptive. We respect and appreciate the very, the amazing care we had.
Sure.
And the very competent nurses we had.
We had good ones.
Yes.
We also had some really bad ones.
And for that, yes. With that being said, there were some interesting characters that I wondered, how did you find yourself here taking care of patients by yourself?
Yes.
Yes.
So that's kind of a whole thing for that. He does mention police reform, and he wants to recruit police officers in the neighborhoods that they serve. I know that's been a struggle for some communities trying to recruit police officers, especially with the whole BLM experience that we've had. A lot of people have negative attitudes towards police officers, which means in turn makes it more difficult to try to get black people to be police officers. So it's a double-edged sword there. And so, that's something he's going to try to address if he had the opportunity. And then also establishing a commission to root out systematic bias in law enforcement. That's going to be a little tougher. That's kind of ambitious. We'll see how that goes.
See how it goes.
He wants to have justice for black farmers and try to end the USDA's discrimination against the farmers to try to get them a check. He also wants to do some reforms in the prisons, expand the reintroduction programs of nonviolent offenders, environmental justice. I know a lot of our communities, we see illegal dumping and tearing up our communities with toxic waste and stuff. And so he wants to try to address that. And he has a specific policy for student debt relief, since he says in his words that black families have been disproportionately affected by student debt. And so there's a whole plan for black people that he's proposed. Does Joe have something similar to that? I haven't seen it. I know he's mentioned just, appointing people. But as far as actual policies, especially when it comes to the business side of things, I think Mr. Joe is lacking in that department. Yeah,
nothing as specific as that.
Yeah.
That I've heard. So
let's
maybe some black jobs.
Oh God, black jobs. That's a solution. Black jobs. All right. So I honestly, I think that Robert Kennedy Jr. is a pretty viable candidate, especially as a third party option. These next two, less so. Especially this guy. This guy is. Well, we'll just get into it. That's Youngblood, Chase Oliver. So he wants to just end all tariffs, get rid of tariffs, get rid of bailouts, get rid of everything. Just clear the whole house. Right? He wants to advocate for a marketplace alternative like the direct primary care. He wants to remove limits on the health savings accounts. Education, abolish the Department of Education. We don't need it. We don't need anything. Just get rid of all of it. Everything.
Who wants education?
Go. Immigration, he wants to simplify it to some type of Ellis Island style process and make it easier for citizenship. That's actually not too bad. And then for his foreign policy, just close everything. We don't need anything. Just get rid of everything. The bases, everything. We don't need anything. That right there is Mr. Oliver. He is. I can't go too in on him because I realize that a lot of his stuff has to do with the actual platform itself. He's a libertarian, right? So what do I expect from a libertarian? I expect this. Like this is what I expect. Like libertarians believe in just minimal government as possible.
Leave us alone.
Just don't do anything. Don't help. Don't hinder. Don't exist.
We don't need education. We don't need
Department of Education. Get rid of it. We don't need it. Out. The cabinet out.
So what does that do for the student loans?
Out. Get it. Nothing. Get it out of here. We don't want it.
Oh my gosh.
All right, so so Chase Oliver, he's the youngest one who's running for president.
Shout out to Youngblood.
Shout out to Youngblood. He's struggling to get campaign funds. I know we based the order of this off of how much money they've been able to accumulate for their campaigns. And Robert Kennedy is seeing a spike since that horrific debate that we saw. Not so much for Chase. Chase has struggled to get off the ground for the most part. But he's there. He's off the ground. He's
Okay.
not on it. He's off the ground. So here's his policy. So the immigration, as we mentioned, he's interested in some type of Ellis Island style processing where you basically just come in, you tell me what your name is, change your name if you want to. I don't really care what your background is. If you're white, you get to go in. That's what I assume. I mean, if you're telling because that's what happened at Ellis Island. If we're going to be real about it.
Oh dear God! So that's what the Ellis Island.
That's what it is.
reference
That's what it is. So it's like if this is what you're talking about, that's if you're white or some shade of white, right? You're Italian or whatever the case, because I think at that time they differentiated the different countries of Europe.
Oh.
Change your name or whatever the case you want to do. Who you are, guy? Go on the ship. Go. You're welcome to America. Like that's.
Are y'all for that?
But
Tough crowd.
in all seriousness, he is interested in expanding the H-1B or B, excuse me, startup visas for skilled immigrants.
Okay.
I guess to help kind of stir the economy up. For criminal justice, I'm really interested to really see if he has anything for criminal justice. I seriously doubt it. But for criminal justice, he wants to. So he wants to end qualified immunity for federal law enforcement. Right, he wants to abolish the federal mandate of minimum sentencing. He wants to focus on persecuting crimes with victims rather than victimless crimes. He wants to abolish the death penalty for federal crimes. And he wants to end the war on drugs, including decriminalizing all drugs.
I'm out.
And pardoning nonviolent drug offenders. Look, anything goes, right? We need to just get rid of government. Just get rid of everything. Everything must go. Every drug is legal. Just nothing. Let's not have government at all.
Is he doing drugs in that photo? Okay, let me stop.
It's the libertarians.
Laissez-faire?
Yeah, laissez-faire.
Laissez-faire, yeah.
Right. He's a big proponent of privacy. Right. He wants to abolish the Patriot Act. He wants to end the TSA. Are you guys tired of going to the airport and having to take off your clothes and have somebody dig up your butt and all those different things? If you're done with all that. Right, vote for Chase. Chase is going to get rid of the TSA. You be able to just walk directly to the airplane.
And so would any criminal
hey,
or a person carrying
look,
nefarious
just get.
things.
I don't want any level of government. Just get it all out of here.
I think as much as I love privacy as well, and I did not appreciate divulging like all my business and everything just to get the global entry. The interview wasn't so bad, and having that and having an ease of travel, I think if you just take the steps and get that, then you can travel freely and pass by a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And that way, we still have TSA. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
I just
weird.
can't justify removing them completely.
They
Am I
have,
crazy?
They serve a purpose. I think that maybe it was overboard to a certain extent. But to say we don't need them at all, I don't know.
And then what does that do for jobs? Do you have job
I'm not
replacement for all
concerned with
those
jobs.
people
Hey,
who are working TSA?
you need to just pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. That's
Right, because you got to do it by yourself because we don't want government involved.
no government, nothing.
No.
His foreign policy. I really can't even say it's really a real foreign policy, but he wants to end all tariffs. Look, no taxes on nothing. Just we'll be able to. If you thought it was bad now, where somebody who lives in India can work in a slave shop and make goods at like $2 a day, and so that we can get a T-shirt for $5. If you thought it was bad now, right? Just wait until there's no tariffs, right? Because what that means is all the really poor or low labor countries that you can get, manufacturing made, it's super, super cheap.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to compete with that because who in America wants to work for 10 hours a day making $1 an hour?
Under deplorable conditions.
Do you want to do that?
And no lunch break. There's no lunch.
There's no lunch. There is no lunch.
If you know, you know.
If you know,
no
you know.
lunch, no water. That remember?
That sounds nuts to
Texas,
me.
they actually had to implement that law last year to make sure that they gave them water breaks during the summer.
Straight facts. Because we were over here, we're working people to death.
Literally.
Yes.
Wow.
No, I don't agree with that at all. So he wants to prohibit government bailouts on irresponsible businesses. That one's a little bit more complicated because, like, for the airlines, we interfered with their business. And if you get rid of the airlines, then what happens? Right? Like, I think we need airplanes. I think, the airplane is the fastest mode of transportation that we have. And so you let them go out of business, and then I guess you allow a monopoly to develop because the one airline that is profitable will just buy up the rest of the planes. And then all of a sudden you just have, a big giant airline, and then that's it. So then they can jack up prices as much as they want. I don't know about that one. I think that causes more issues than good. I think it's situational. I mean, you have smart people making these decisions. At least you hope you have smart people making these decisions, and they're weighing out all the pros and cons. So I don't know about that one. That's kind of a tricky one. He wants to close all of the overseas military bases. That seems to be a theme with a lot of the third-party candidates, is this getting rid of these military bases. We'll just get rid of them. And he wants to use trade as a tool for peace. As we mentioned with his earlier, his economic policy, get rid of those tariffs. Get rid of them. For education, he wants to abolish the whole Department of Education. Just get rid of all of it. We don't need it, right? End federal involvement in student loans. We don't need to issue out student loans either. Screw it. If you want to go to school, you're going to have to go to your local bank and get some ridiculous interest rate or something. Or just don't go.
Yeah.
I guess that's what it is. That's the solution to that. He wants to make existing student loans interest-free. That's interesting. That kind of is contradictory, but all right. And he is in favor of allowing people to discharge their debt in bankruptcy. Interesting.
Huh.
Okay, so I guess it's a transitional thing, right? Maybe he's trying to transition out of involvement in education, but so the things that are currently in existence, let's just figure out a way to deal with it. But moving forward, no more loans.
No more loans. No more Department of Education. No more of their plans. Okay.
Now, what's interesting about this is I think the real question that we should be asking is, why does tuition cost so much? Instead of worrying, I mean, we're more concerned about the debt, which is something that should be concerned about. I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but we're not asking why does it cost so much, because it wouldn't be that big of a deal if tuition was only like $10,000 a semester or something like that, right? When I talk about my grandmother and her going to school, right, she didn't have to cut off her spleen and liver in order to go to college, like.
Mm-hmm.
Why does
donating plasma and blood?
Right. Like, why does tuition at some of these schools cost $60,000? Like, that just sounds insane. Why? So yeah, that's the question I don't really see people asking too much. He does have some policies for gun rights, and so he opposes new gun restrictions and wants to work to repeal the existing ones. It should be unfiltered. Why is the government involved in anything? We should just have no government. We should just have whatever, right? People should just do whatever. People should just buy whatever, right? Whatever.
Oh, goodness.
Healthcare. He wants to reduce regulations on pharmaceuticals. That is the only person that I've seen that actually wants to help the pharmaceutical industry. Everyone else wants to either figure out a way to decrease drug costs or something along those lines. This guy's like, regulation for pharmaceuticals, we don't need it. We don't need anything.
I need to see this guy's donor list. Is that his one major donation? The one major donation is from the pharmaceuticals.
This is
suspicious.
interesting.
You want to help these people?
Yes.
No offense to any of you lucky bees out there who are part of the pharmaceutical industry and are killing it. Good for
Man.
you and your family. However,
The people
we don't
who have
need any
to,
more involvement.
right, for the people who have to actually take these drugs, right, and then have to take multiple drugs because you have one drug to deal with your issue.
Yes.
You have another drug to deal with the side effects of the first drug.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have another drug to deal with the side effects of the second drug. And then you
Yes.
have another drug to deal with the side effects of the third drug.
Mm-hmm.
And then before you know it, you're taking 20 pills.
Yes. And if they happen to make a mistake, it's going to take several years, maybe even decades, before they're actually held accountable. And by then, they've moved on to another drug.
Yes. No bueno. All right, so abortion. He encourages states to decriminalize abortion. Oh, that's actually pretty surprising. He supports the Hyman Amendment to prevent federal funding for abortions. Okay. And encourages alternatives to abortions, such as adoption. Okay. I don't have any issue with that. That's fine. Whatever. Inflation. He wants to reduce federal spending. Of course, because when you get rid of all these departments,
What are you
right,
spending
you
on?
also have to get rid of the staff. So we don't need government. We just...
Again,
You don't
where
need-
are all those people going to go?
Who
The
cares?
federal government is one of the highest employers.
Absolutely.
Like, if not,
You know where they're going to go? To the second highest employer, and that's Walmart. You're going to work for the federal government,
Oh,
and then once that
goodness.
job is gone, you're going to go to Walmart.
oh, man.
There you go. He wants
All
to
thanks to Chase Oliver.
Shout out to Chase Oliver. Shout out to Youngblood. He also wants to reduce regulations to increase productivity. Look, right? Why do we have to worry about public safety and public health, right? Why would we regulate a company who deals with dangerous chemicals to actually safely dispose of those chemicals?
We're not gonna do
No.
that.
Get rid of regulation. Let them pollute all that they can because you're stifling jobs.
Everybody has to be free.
Free. Just do whatever you please. Right? That this is Gotham. And he's Bane.
Y'all said you wanted to be liberated.
Liberation.
Liberation indeed.
Mr. Chase Oliver. Interesting character. All right, so
We're winding down, almost getting to our favorites, where you can kind of tell a little bit who we support on different things, but you'll be able to find out issue by issue and shortly.
We can't end this without talking about the most interesting person in this race that you don't really see because she doesn't really have a lot of funding like that. And she's continually she's continually ran for president. I don't know how long. And I don't really know the legitimacy of this party. But the poster child for the Green Party, let's get it, Jill Stein. Miss Mexican President version 2. If you know, you know. All right, so economy. She wants to do some type of Bill of Rights for economy. She wants to increase the minimum wage to $25 an hour as a minimum wage. All right, so she also wants to create a national health care plan similar to what, a UK style plan. She also wants to cancel all medical debt. She wants to guarantee public education up to graduate school. And she wants to abolish all student loan debt. Huh. Immigration? Let's abolish the ICE program. Get rid of it, right? Get rid of the war on drugs and then just expand on programs. Foreign policies? I want to cut the military spending to 75%. Get rid of all these military bases. We don't need any of them. I am Jill Stein. Jill Stein.
Wonderful.
She's a character, man. She's interesting. I mentioned that she's the Mexican president version 2 because Mexico's president is now a Jewish lady, which I find it hilarious that the Mexican president is a Jewish lady. And of course we know Jill Stein is Jewish. She is probably the most radical of the candidates running. I mean, we made fun of Chase, and Chase gave us a lot to work with. I mean, he is interesting, and the Libertarian Party is also very interesting. But Jill, these ideas are very extreme, to say the least. Right? We're gonna get into it. So, her economy plan. She wants to implement this economic Bill of Rights, which guarantees a living wage. It guarantees a job. It guarantees income housing. It guarantees health care. It guarantees education. It guarantees retirement. She views these things as basic needs, which everyone does need to do this, but she's guaranteeing this as the federal government to everybody.
What's wrong?
That's a lot. How are you going to afford all that? So she wants to raise the minimum wage to $25 an hour. And so does that mean the guy who's flipping burgers at McDonald's, he's making 25?
Yes. Part-time.
He's
making more than his manager.
That's crazy. That's insane.
Or the same.
I don't know how you can sustain that. That sounds insane. That sounds crazy. I don't know how that's going to be possible.
Well, remember how surprised and excited? No, I was not excited. Surprised I was about the dollar burger being gone, the whole menu. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's up to what, $3 or something now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome to the $6 menu, and that's the cheap part.
100% facts. She wants to implement a guaranteed livable income above poverty level, so everyone will be lifted out of poverty. There won't be a single poor person in the U.S. if Jill is elected president.
She's got heart. I appreciate the sentiment. Just realistically, how?
I don't know how that. Yeah. Well, everyone's gonna have some type of UBI, right? Everyone's gonna have a check to show up at their bank account, and yeah.
Does the U.S. have some coffers that I don't know about from this?
I don't think so.
Because I thought there was trillions of dollars of debt.
No.
Okay.
She also wants to expand and strengthen Social Security, and she wants to break up monopolies and heavily tax the ultra-rich individuals and corporations. So this is how all this stuff is going to get paid. She is going to find people who have money, and she's going to take that money and redistribute that money to the poorest of us so that they will not be living in poverty. That is, I believe, the solution here, according to Jill Stein. Healthcare. Now, this I don't have an issue with. She wants to create a national healthcare system. We're kind of in a pseudo system right now. If you guys don't know this, like if you ever checked a medical bill and you look at like the different line items of different things, you'll notice that a box of tissue costs like $400, and you're like, how is that possible? This doesn't make any sense. But it's because they're subsidizing all the people that don't have insurance. So if you have insurance, they want to book you out the wazoo because the people who don't have insurance, they're not going to collect a single dime out of them. So we're already kind of living in this pseudo healthcare universal thing. But the alternative, the issue with this is that you're collecting massive amounts of debt for those who don't have the insurance. So, I do think at some point we do need to move to some type of universal healthcare or something. I don't know what that looks like. But I do know that the people who have insurance are paying for the people who don't already today. So I don't have an issue with that plan. At least it's a plan to try to tackle that issue. She wants to cancel all medical debt. Medical debt is a problem. I know medical debt. It's really hard to climb out of just because it just piles up and it just gets worse and worse. I mean, once you start having health issues, you just keep having health issues. And it's not your fault, And so there needs to be some solution for that. And then she also wants to take pharmaceutical industry, the whole industry, and basically make it some type of public ownership. This sounds like socialism. When you start peeling back all these different policy things. Education. So she wants to create free public education from pre-K to graduate school, which that's interesting. I've never heard anybody go as far as graduate school for free. I'm not sure how that was going to be paid for. She wants to abolish student debt, so we just don't even have it anymore. And then she wants to increase the equalized public school funding. Education is a way for people to improve themselves. But again, I just don't know how you're going to achieve this feasibly and financially. So we'll see how that goes. Housing. She wants to guarantee housing because she thinks that housing is a human right. Now, I don't know how you guarantee housing. That sounds, again, pie in the sky. And if I wanted to sum up Jill Stein's policies, it's pie in the sky policies. It's very ambitious, and I'm just not sure if this is, some of this stuff is feasible because, money doesn't just come out of thin air. we would like to believe that in the federal government with fiat money, but that money has to be paid. The piper has to be paid at some point. So she wants to do that. She wants to have some type of universal rent control. And again, this sounds like this overreaching control. Like there should be a balance between not doing anything government and doing too much government. And I think Jill Stein and Chase Oliver are the opposite ends of that spectrum. Chase doesn't want any essential government, and Jill wants to just do so much with the federal government. Both too extreme. She mentioned democracy reform. She wants to improve the voting process. She wants to abolish the Electoral College. She wants to expand voting rights and ballot access. Expanding voting rights is not too bad. It depends on what she means by that. Criminal justice. She wants to end mass incarceration and build a system centered around restorative justice. She wants to ban private prisons. That's not bad. And abolish the death penalty. Okay, we'll see how that goes. I mean, it depends. Like some people, I don't know. I don't know if it's right or wrong to have the death penalty. I know the people who are usually involved with that have created massive offenses. So I don't know. That's debatable. She wants to legalize cannabis and decriminalize personal possession of other drugs. And she wants to end the cash bail system and qualified immunity for police. For the environment, she wants to achieve 100% clean renewable energy to zero negative carbon emissions by 2035. And she wants to ban fracking, new fossil fuel infrastructure and nuclear power. I think there's a way to do it. I have seen some negative effects on the environment from fracking. There have been some folks who have found their water supply is contaminated by chemicals that you use during the fracking process, and their water is not usable anymore. So, guys, look up H2S. That's one of the chemicals that you can use in the fracking process, and that's caused a massive amount of damage to people who have been affected by that. So, I wouldn't go as far as banning it. I do think we probably would need to taper down. And I do think there should be more investment in renewables for sure. I do think that, that's something that we would need, cause we need water, right? We can't destroy our environment to the point where we can't even use anything. Like water is a necessity, right? If we're destroying our water, we might as well just be asking ourselves to just kill ourselves, because that's essentially what's happening. I don't know. I don't know what the solution to that is, though. For a foreign policy, she believes in just closing down all the military bases that we have, cutting the military budget to like 75%. Just get rid of it. She wants to end, never-ending wars, and she actually wants to disband NATO. And she wants to be the leader in disarming nuclear weapons. Good luck with that one. We'll see how that goes. But I don't think people are going to be following the U.S. in that policy change. This is where it gets kind of weird, because she believes in reparations for descendants of African slaves. The reparation thing has been talked about for years, and I'm not sure if it makes any sense now. Because how is this going to work exactly? Like, we have so many mixed race people today. Do they get a full reparation, or do they get like a half reparation? Are we still operating with the 1-drop rule, where if you have an ounce of black, you're black? What about the freed black folks? How do we know who was free black and who was slave black? It's too messy now. I don't know if reparations makes any sense today. That's something that really should have been dealt with in 1865, right? But now in 2024, I don't know. Adonis is, I guess, considered black, but he has blue eyes and blonde hair. Like, he would be getting a reparations check.
Him and that rapper Logic.
Right, like, does that make any sense? I don't think so. So, yeah. Who knows? She wants to honor treaties of the indigenous nations, which are we not honoring those now? I mean, they're kind of doing their own thing at this point, right?
Yeah. Also something that could have been handled way long time ago. If there's some kind of undone issue.
Yeah. And then she also wants to guarantee full rights and protections for women, LGBTQIA plus individuals, and people with disabilities.
That was on her platform page?
Yes.
Okay.
And she wants to create a path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants and expand the refugee programs. Jill Stein, everyone. Jill Stein. So that is a quick rundown of essentially everybody who's running for office in this upcoming election. Based off of what you heard, and also you guys can chime in the comment section.
Please do.
Who had the best economic policy in your opinion?
Ooh. The best economic policy, in my opinion. Oh, wait, do you have yours or something?
I do.
Because I can tell it's just it's on the tip of your tongue. I think I have one that I'm most in favor of. Okay, yeah. I would say RFK for me.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards Robert Kennedy Jr. The minimum wage at 15 is already kind of there, so I think that's a kind of a moot point.
Yeah, it's reasonable.
And so we're already kind of there right now. Supporting small businesses, that's the backbone of this country. So I'm in favor of that. The mortgage plan sounds very interesting. I'd like to learn a little bit more about that.
That is what really piqued my interest.
Yeah,
the most.
That seems very interesting.
Yeah.
And then reducing military spending and redirecting that to domestic needs. I think that would be useful in the short term, just so that we can clean up our stuff. And I think after we clean up our stuff, maybe we could start pushing more funding to military. I don't believe in having a weak military. I do think that military is important because you need to be ready in case there is a situation where you need to, squat. But I think that for now, we have so many domestic issues that we really need to focus because we're almost going off the rails right now. But yeah, so I'm kind of leaning towards Robert Kennedy as far as his economic policy. Trump doesn't really have one. I know a lot of people will say that, we were great under Trump, and that's subjective.
Yeah.
I can't really negate somebody's anecdotal experience, but also some of it's situational too. Some of it might have to do with the fact that you happen to be in a good season, and I can ask somebody who wasn't in a good season, and they could say, "Oh, it was horrible." COVID, a bunch of people, a bunch of people lost jobs during COVID. So I don't know about that one. But the idea of trickle down economics, I'm just not a fan of. I don't think that really makes any sense as far as helping out people on the lower end of that totem pole. It's not as advertised. Does it help somebody? It does. Does it help the people that he says it helps? No.
It helps the people that start with the full cup who aren't waiting for driplets at the bottom.
Yeah. Joe, I would like to see more from his plan. He's talking about creating infrastructure jobs and creating clean energy sector jobs and then increasing taxes on corporations. Cool. That's the same stuff you've been saying. It's the same. You've had 4 years to implement those things now at this point.
Yeah. And I'd like to know what more is he talking about strength in the middle class.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, exactly. What does that mean?
So.
I know it's necessary. The middle class might be, some people had said it was disappearing in the past couple of years, but how? What is your plan you're putting forth?
Right.
Anyway.
Who do you think had the strongest immigration policies?
Well, the strongest or the one I would favor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Because I think some people were tougher than others. But, yeah. Because, okay, if you want to talk about strength, Jill Stein is completely opposite because she's like, oh, let's get rid of it. I wanted to double check before I answered that. Yeah. She's like, get rid of ICE. And I get that they've been there's been some pretty unpleasant like video, pictures, things that have come out about how people were handled with immigration, especially at the border, or when there were the children who are undocumented and things like that. So obviously, every agency is going to need some changes and everything. I don't know about abolishing it because you still have cartels that would have unfettered access.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's Jill Stein's probably the weakest. I don't think she has much experience in the immigration issue.
Yeah.
I would say that Trump's policies are the strictest, but I don't know if they are the most beneficial.
Ooh, good point.
That's so. I mean, if you really were just, I am not about immigration at all, and I want somebody who's going to get in there and just really slam that door down. Trump's your guy for that. But do I say it's the most beneficial? No, because I do think that what's really interesting is that H-1B startup visa. I think that's an interesting tactic there to expand upon that.
And that's under.
That would be Robert F. Kennedy Jr. again.
Wow.
And he wasn't the only one. Him and actually Chase said that too.
Okay. But he also threw in something about Ellis Island. So
that was kind of off base.
Yeah.
But and I think Robert has kind of like a middle of a road approach. He still believes in securing the border.
Yes.
And in ending illegal immigration, but he does want to create pathways for people to get citizenship if that's something they're interested in. And also increasing the startup visas to help our businesses.
Yeah. And that's more realistic with the fabric of our nation.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that's not bad. So yeah, as far as the strongest, if you're really about strict, then you're Trump. But I think as far as more beneficial, I would probably go RFK on that one, Junior.
Yeah, and the asylum claim process of just being able to, kind of jump in and say, hey, here's my story and get asylum.
Yeah, the people seeking asylum.
I think that he's correct. We need to
rein it in a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a good approach on that one too.
Yeah, so I'm RFK 2 for 2 so far.
2 for 2 for RFK. What do you think about healthcare policy? Who had the strongest healthcare policy? From what you heard. And feel free to chime in the comment section, guys.
Yep, on YouTube and on Twitter. But feel free to chime in. I mean, Chase Oliver actually said, this is not my choice, but Chase Oliver did say something kind of interesting about the health savings accounts. Mm-hmm. So he had an interesting angle of how to prepare for healthcare issues. Mm-hmm. But I might just be on there with RFK, if I'm remembering correct, because he had a multifaceted thing of medical research. The big pharma thing is a huge thing for me.
Yes.
Bias, you guys know, I've had my struggles with healthcare. So that is one of them.
Yeah, I think that definitely the weakest one is Trump. Which it makes sense because Trump's not interested in really healthcare like that. So his whole main thing was just get rid of the Affordable Care Act. But that doesn't really help you as far as other issues within the healthcare system. I do think that Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s stance as far as his policies for healthcare are pretty strong. Definitely looking into what is creating all of these chronic diseases that we're experiencing. Living in this country, you think that cancer is normal. And when you go off to other countries, you start to realize that cancer is not really normal like that. Like, there's so many people that you can go to in your own personal life. That, that guy had this cancer and this, my aunt had this cancer. And it's because our environment is toxic. And so, having somebody who's actually interested in creating some type of task force or some type of think tank or whatever to look into what is causing us to be so sick, I think it's a good policy. And that it really anybody who gets into office should really look into. We need to clean up our environment. Our environment is giving us havoc right now. So yeah, I like that. I like that one a lot. I did think the savings account thing was interesting from Chase. Joe Biden's was very weak, beyond just strengthening the Affordable Care Act and then just trying to lower prescription drugs. I think everybody is on that page of lowering prescription drugs. But specifically how you're trying to attack that is in question. The organic farm idea from Robert F. Kennedy was also interesting too. Our food sucks. You know, especially if you go overseas, you know, and actually eat food there, you start to realize that, you know, food is just fresher. You know, it's not our mass production machine needs to be tweaked. And so, you know, actually being able to tackle that, he's the only candidate that's really talking about this, the poor quality of our food. So he had to step out. So I'm going to basically take care of foreign policy. But, you know, I think foreign policy depends on what you value. You know, all the third party candidates were talking about basically getting rid of most of our military bases. I don't know enough about the job of the military bases to really say if we need them or not. So I can't really make a comment on that. But I do think that Trump is going in the opposite direction as far as increasing their funding and increasing, you know, their access to things. I think we do need to kind of focus more on our domestic problems. So with that being said, I do slightly lean towards Robert F. Kennedy again on this issue. However, I'm not sure about the closing all of the military bases. I don't think that I would need to know more about their specific role on what they do in order to know if we need them or not. I know we have a lot of them, and they're all over the world. You know, I know people get deployed all the time. But as far as, you know, what they do, a lot of times what they do is either they can't talk about it or whatever the case may be. So, I don't know. That's an interesting one. Now, ending the policy of sending drones around the world, that's interesting. I know we do use drones to snipe people off, and Obama was notorious for, you know, droning people. But who do you think had the strongest foreign policy plan out of the candidates that we talked about? I mentioned RFK,
and he's been leading.
He's been winning right now.
Yeah.
The only thing I said I didn't really like about that is I don't know about the role of the military bases. So I just mentioned to the audience that, you know, it's he's one of the people who wants to just close them all down.
Yeah.
But I mean, who kind of stood out to you?
Trump actually stood out to me on the focus on combating terrorism and actually more so the first point of rebuilding American military might, because I believe in what you said earlier about having a strong military presence.
Yes. I do. Having a strong military is important. Kind of what I mentioned though earlier, I do think we have so many domestic problems that we do need to kind of shift focus domestically for the short term. I don't want this to be a situation where we start just only dealing with domestic issues and it becomes a long-term thing. I think just in the short term, focus on domestic, but then, you know, make sure that we're still involved with, you know, foreign affairs. You know, Trump, I hate Trump's attitude. You know, he thinks that he has some type of power and people are afraid of him.
Yeah.
But I mean, that instance with the old Mexican president of saying, you know, I'm not building that wall. I think that's more realistic. Nobody cares about Trump like that.
Exactly. They're like, you build it. Like, you want a wall,
build it. I'm not building that wall.
And you're going to pay for it. Because
So,
Trump tried to say he was going to pay for it, too. I'm like, that's pretty bold.
Yeah, no.
So-
Jill Stein's in the clouds.
She is. And, you know,
I just don't think that she has, there's a lot there, right? She mentioned wanting to disband NATO. She is interesting. As a Jewish woman, she actually is in favor of demanding an immediate ceasefire of Israel. Mm-hmm. So I found that interesting. But she said something that I did actually like. She did say that she wants to end the embargo of Cuba. I think that would actually be a good policy.
So actually, for foreign policy, I probably need to like make a hodgepodge of like a couple different ones. If there was a, you know, we need a candidate to, okay, we'll take a little bit from Jill's, take a little from Trump, and make a new thing, because you guys are each missing some kind of peace.
Yeah, I honestly, I'm gonna change my answer because I think what you just said is actually on point. There's not really anybody who stood out as far as having a really great foreign policy plan, and it would be nice to take little bits and pieces of each person's plan to create a master plan. And yes, definitely the embargo of Cuba, I would be in favor of lifting. The Cuban people are so far removed from the Fidel Castro stuff. And you have so many people risking their life to come to the U.S. from Cuba. If anybody is familiar with Cuban culture, it's a very rich culture. And it would be very nice for Americans to be able to just freely go there, to just experience Havana, to experience, salsa music, son, all these different things, and that makes Cuban culture very rich and vibrant. And it's just kind of unfortunate that they've been living in some type of almost time capsule because of the embargo issues. So, I'd be in favor of that. I think that'd be cool. But I don't believe in cutting the military budget by 75%. That's kind of obsessive. I don't know about that.
I see where she's coming from. I used to, be on that, maybe not on that side all the way, but more of closer to the, what's it called? Charitable side, where it's like in peace, and I still believe in peace. However, I think her and one other candidate are really promoting peace, maybe Chase, but that's not how you achieve it.
Yeah.
And realistically, to protect yourself, you need security.
Yeah.
So there has to be the military. I do believe in the Jill Stein saying that international law, human rights. I am 100% with that, but honestly, the United Nations does not enforce anything. They give recommendations to countries when people violate human rights.
Yeah.
What you need is military presence. Like, that country needs an actual force that's like, the only way to stop a bully is here. We have our own thing to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
So.
What do you guys think? We kind of covered all the candidates that are at least halfway viable in this race. I'm starting to really look into Robert F. Kennedy more. I think that he's showing up to be a decent candidate right now, at least from a policy standpoint. I know a lot of people will talk about his voice. That's why we called him a Raspy Rob. Yeah,
did you guys like our nicknames for everybody?
So there's that, and I don't know how that factors into the voting process as far as like, ooh, do we really want this guy? But then we just came from Joe.
This is true.
So, I think that might be a wash. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I'll do my own do some more digging into Robert, but he just recently did an interview with Earn Your Leisure, or at least that's coming out soon with 19 Keys. That should be interesting. So he's now reaching out to, black platforms. So we'll see how that goes. It'll be interesting. But let us know in the comment section what you guys, who you're leaning for. If you thought that today's program was beneficial.
Yeah.
I have to remind people too.
We didn't want to just leave you guys.
Yeah, like and subscribe. We have to remind people to like, subscribe, of course. I didn't say this during the show, but get those likes up. We have to. Shout outs to Kevin Samuels on that one. But yeah. We'll see you guys next time. And if you have suggestions for future episodes, let us know in the comment section below. We hope you enjoyed today's show. We enjoyed putting it together for you. Enjoy your 4th. I know we did.
Yeah.
And we'll see y'all sometime next week. Let's get it.